Hello, I'm Pat Tice, WA0TDA at ARRL.net. You can reach me there anytime if you have questions about this presentation. You can also check out the URL shown here and find out about the remote station status for the stations that I administer. Are you ready to expand your horizons with remote HF operation? Oh, I'll bet you've heard a lot about operating an HF station remotely via the internet, but why would you want to? Is it hard to do? And will it break the bank? So let's get started. Are you ready to find out more by pushing the power button? Let's start out with this. What do these things have in common? A few of them are thermostat, a book, a magazine, audio player, TV, photography, ham radio, calendar, notepad, telephone, Rolodex, newspaper, pedometer, deck of cards, board games, calculator, shopping list, and so on. Well, they're all controllable by a smartphone or a PC. And why have my phone and PC taken over my photography hobby? Well, for one thing, the smartphone is usually in my pocket, and it has a great camera app. The best camera you have for the job is the one you have with you, not the one that's too heavy to carry when you need to get that great shot. It's got a nearly infinite roll of excellent color film, all digital, of course. It doesn't require a darkroom to process any of my photos, and it's better and faster than a darkroom, producing high-quality images. So the smartphone and the PC are great photography tools to have, along with my traditional cameras. And it's the same way with ham radio. Yeah, I like operating my traditional ham shack in the basement shop, but it's also nice to have the option to control my station remotely. If, for example, I want to check into a net when I'm traveling, or when it's inconvenient to go down to the basement shack. Now, some of us have been in a situation where you are recovering from a medical procedure. Perhaps you have a bad foot, something like that, can't get down to the basement. You can use remote operation to still get on the air from anywhere, even from your easy chair. And at times when operating from the shack might disturb other family members using the space that the shack is in, if it's in a shared space like a rec room or family room or something, you can operate from somewhere else. The station can be perfectly silent in the room that it's in, and you can be having a great conversation or using CW or some other mode remotely. What if I want to use an HF station in a different location that is more favorable, given propagation conditions? Or if my own station is not in service, then I could use somebody else's remote station, perhaps 1,000 miles away. Or I want to share the station with one or more other ops at the same time. You can do that with remote HF operation. Okay, adding HF remote to your toolkit is cheap and easy. Go to remotehams.com. That's the website that has what you need. The free RC4 client software runs on Windows and can be downloaded from Remote Hams. And there's a $10 smartphone app that runs on Android and is available in the Google Play Store. I've got both, and I use them both. The easiest way to get started in this is to use somebody else's existing HF remote. Start out by registering with Remote Hams using your call sign as username. Download and install the free RC4 client software to your Windows PC. Then sign into the software with your Remote Hams credentials. No special settings to your network are going to be needed. other than to allow the app the usual Windows permissions. So don't worry about port forwarding or other router changes. Be sure to set the audio appropriately for your speaker and microphone though. So you start the app. Now this is the client app, we call it. So this is for people who are going to be your clients or yourself using a remote station. There's another app for hosting. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. So you see a list of stations here once you open the app, and you highlight the one you want, in this case my own station, WA0TDA IC7300 CWSSB, and familiarize yourself with the radio interface once you make that connection. So YouTube is great for a lot of things, and there are some really good videos on YouTube and on station websites and on my website at tice.us/WA0TDA. When you press the power button, there's going to be a slight delay, and then the radio turns on. You click the transmit or tune button, but nothing happens. What could be wrong? Well, what you're doing is something that's not allowed until you're allowed permission to transmit on this person's station. So once you gain that permission and you're allowed to be in the client list for a particular station, you have transmit permission, then the tune button and the transmit button will work. Now when you press that tune or transmit button for the first time and you don't have transmit permission, the app is going to log your attempt, and the station owner will see that if he or she checks the list. But I would advise that you should really email the station owner and ask for permission to get transmit privileges. So with any new radio, you're going to check out the most vital controls first. Start with the on-off switch, the power switch. Seems pretty obvious. If you're sitting at a desk with a new radio right in front of you, that's what you do, right? So you do the same thing with the software. Check the audio level, the volume control, the RF gain. Where is the push-to-talk toggle? What about the tune button to tune the antenna? And of course, you'll want to tune around by spinning the main tuning dial. You can check out the radio's memories too. It's at the bottom of the app screen, over toward the left bottom. And look around the interface to find sliders, drop-downs, and buttons to perform the various functions of the particular radio that you're using. And they're going to be different depending on the kind of radio that's being hosted. So a TS 480 SAT Kenwood radio would look a little bit different in the interface. The buttons are going to be arranged. The things that it does might be a little bit different versus an ICOM IC7300. So once you get that transmit approval from a station owner, then that's the time to check out the antenna tuning and transmit functions for real. Sometimes you have to tune the antenna before the radio will receive properly. And, of course, remember to identify every 10 minutes and at the end of a series of transmissions. Now, as control operator, you simply use your call sign as usual. However, it's best to also identify every so often using both your call and the remote station's call in order to let other operators know where the station location is, which is useful in selecting antennas and antenna directions. This also clears up confusion about propagation. So I might identify by saying, this is WA0TDA via the W0JH remote. If you think about it, you could be using a remote that's 1,000 miles away from your QTH. Which way are people going to point their antennas? Are they going to point their antennas toward me in Woodbury, Minnesota, or if I'm using a station, let's say in Colorado, they should be pointing their beam toward Colorado. So that's the purpose of identifying this way. You want to let people know that you're using a remote station and the call sign of the remote station, and you could even say it's in Colorado Springs or whatever. Now, it's the internet. There's a little bit of delay. You a Morse code fan? Great. Some stations, and all of the ones that I administer, are CW compatible. Since there is some delay inherent in internet connections, it can take some getting used to. So I advise you to forget about rapid fire CW break-in exchanges. Now, I know that it's fun to operate that way, but you do have to get used to maybe like a half-second delay a lot of times in the internet. And you can imagine if you're used to rapid-fire break-in exchanges on CW, that could be a little bit frustrating. And of course, there will be slight delays in single sideband operation too, so plan to practice anticipating a half-second delay and just build it into the way you operate. Now, FT8 is really popular these days, and FT8 operation is possible remotely, but somewhat inefficient due to the delay. If you're an FT8 operator already, you know how important it is to sync your computer to internet time so that everybody is making the exchanges in the most efficient way possible. Now, with a half-second delay in the internet, this can be a little bit of a challenge. So anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Has anybody decoded the wine bottle there? It's Chardonnay. If you want to carry your remote control in your pocket, you can get the RC4 Android app for under $10. Does it work on mobile data? This is a big question. Why have it on your phone if it won't work on mobile data? The answer, yes, and it works great. It does also work on Wi-Fi if you use your phone, including public Wi-Fi, and if you're cautious, as you should be when you're using public Wi-Fi, it will work through your VPN or virtual private network. Does the mobile app support CW as well as phone operation? Yes. Can you install it on more than one device without paying for it more than once? Yes. Remember, this app is under $10 at the Play Store and well worth it. So now we know it's easy to get started in HF Remote as a user. But what if you want to put your own station on the air as a remote, either to use yourself, a private remote, or if you want to allow others to use it, a public remote? Well, this is going to be a little bit more involved. And if you have an older radio like the IC706 Mark II-G that's pictured here, it can be remoted, but you're going to need an interface. This is extra hardware, like a rig blaster, and setup is going to be a little bit more complicated. The setup is going to be very similar to what you would have if you were using this radio for RTTY or FT8 or some other digital mode. New radios have USB interfaces that allow rig control and audio to be ported through a single cable. So with these newer radios, you don't need that special interface like a rig blaster. You could still use one if you want to, but you can get everything done with an old printer cable, an old USB printer cable. And who doesn't have some of those lying around? So the USB driver has to be installed before you connect the radio to the host PC with that USB cable. This is especially true of ICOM. I think it's true of other models as well. And the reason is that Windows will go ahead and grab the first driver that it thinks is right if you're not careful. So you have to install the correct one first, and that would be from the radio company. So ICOM can provide that in this case. And then the steps you take to connect the radio are the same ones you would use to prepare the radio for digital mode operation of any kind. So now that you have your rig connected to your Windows PC, you're ready to prepare the software that will put it online. Start by going to remotehams.com and download the RC4 host software. Remember, you've already got the client software. Now you're going to host a station, so you need hosting software. Run the installation file and log in using your call sign and your remote hams password. And I have to remind you at this time, when you first go to the remotehams.com website, you want to create an account, and your account name should be your call sign, and then you figure out what password you want to use and use that, and get a pencil and write it down because it may be hard to recover that information if you don't do so. And I do want to warn you ahead of time. I've had some people do this, but they'll pick out some crazy name, some pseudonym instead of their call sign because I don't know, that's what they're used to doing when they register someplace on the internet for something. And then when it comes time to actually get on the air, they find out, hey, that's that pseudonym, that crazy name that you picked, that's what's going to be shown on other people's screens when they're using the remote ham software. So you want to do the right thing and use your call sign for your username. And if you make that mistake, you have to contact the owner of the remotehams.com website to get the account scrubbed, and then you have to start all over again. So don't make that mistake. When you're signing up for the first time at the remotehams.com website, you're going to pick a username and password. The username is always going to be your call sign, and then the password can be whatever meets the password requirements. So, using the guide on the website, remotehams.com, set up the software with your radio model and the rig control settings. And the screen will look something like this. Now for an ICOM, I'm going to use cat control, full remote radio, and I'm going to use the radio connection, push to talk, and CW keying tabs on this interface and go through whatever ports I need to put in there. There's a place for other devices as well, but I don't have a rotor, I don't have an amplifier on this station, so no other devices there. And then you save and restart and you go on to the next thing. So the help file is there, and there are many custom settings. So check out the user manual and the support forums both. This is what the hosting software looks like when it's running on your host PC that's connected to your radio. And you'll notice up near the top there, it has forwarded some ports automatically and then synchronized with remotehams.com, and it should be ready to go. Anyway, getting back to some of those other connections, the COM port settings are going to vary with your radio and PC, so I can't tell you exactly what yours are going to be. Mine happen to show up as COM port 5, and I'm using a serial rate of 9600. You set the radio to the rate that you want. You can use a faster one if you want. I find this works okay. And I'm going to check DTR and RTS for an ICOM, and I'm choosing the radio driver selection there you see on the right, ICOM 7300, and my radio connection method is going to be through a COM port. So you might have to look at the rig's instruction book. I know, you probably don't like to look at the instruction book, but sometimes you have to with these radios, right? Next, you're going to check out the audio settings. This is one of the menus that you're going to find in the host software. So you go to audio settings and you have a VoIP, the voice over internet port. Mine I chose to be 4526, and you can just use the default ones that you want to just make it simple, and unless you have more than one remote station, you don't have to have more different VoIP ports. Then the microphone receive audio from radio. There's a codec for that, and for transmit there's a codec. Pick those. They're going to be USB audio codec. That's what the USB driver is going to be, the one that you installed for the USB cable. And then you're going to set the microphone and volume levels, and these I put somewhere in the middle to start out with. So remember, with since you're hosting now, the microphone level that you see there is going to be receive audio input. So it's kind of counterintuitive. And the volume, that's the transmit audio output, because now you're on the other side, you're hosting. And toward the bottom of this, there's third-party audio solutions if you want to stream using Skype or Unreal Media Server or something like that. But I wouldn't be using that, so I didn't do anything with it. Oh, let's go back here. I used port 4526 for audio, and this port must be forwarded in your home router. And just a thing about port forwarding, now this is a little bit of an advanced networking thing that you do with your router. So you have to log into your router settings and find usually advanced settings in a router like a Netgear. And then under that you'll find something like port forwarding, and you can follow the router instructions to set up port forwarding for whatever ports you need. And the job can be made easier if you have a UPnP system in your router. I use an Eero mesh network router system here, multiple routers, and so these meshed routers will just forward the ports necessary automatically. It'll handshake with the application, and the application asks for port forwarding of such and such port, and it'll go ahead and do that. So that makes it a lot easier. Anyway, you might find this part to be one of the biggest head scratchers of the whole setup. So get some help if you need it, forwarding ports in your router. Now remember I said you didn't have to do anything in particular. Your software, client software like the little app for the Android phone, that works without forwarding any ports. It works on Wi-Fi, works on public internet, and so forth. But hosting is different. You have to have control of the network to do it and be able to forward ports. Okay, server settings are going to require another port to be forwarded. This is to actually control the radio, and that will be an adjacent port usually. So my other port was 4526, and this one I picked 4527. And if you just use the defaults, that come with the software. That'll work great. You just have to look and see what they are and then get your router to forward those ports. Also on this page you see there's some basic security. So you can enforce some policies over here on the right. Enforce ask to tune. I do that. I turn transmitter off when user disconnects. I mean, everybody should do that anyway before they disconnect, but you never know about people. They might have an episode, shall we say, and forget to do that. So you don't want to leave the radio in transmit. So it's going to turn off automatically when a user disconnects. And you can also enable a reserved slot system if you want to allow your users to reserve time on the radio. So when you restart the server software, UPnP is going to ask your compatible router, and I hope you have one, to forward the ports automatically. Then you don't have to do it yourself. And you notice this is what your screen is going to look like when the host software is starting. You can see the UPnP requesting router to forward ports, and then it gives the port numbers, and 45, 26, and 27 are the ones that I use. It also forwarded port 843, which is an older legacy port that really isn't used that much anymore unless somebody has really old versions of this hosting software. Now, if you're a CW person and you want to have your station run CW, then you're going to have to go to another level of effort, shall we say, because you need a special interface, some hardware, to use another COM port on your PC. So you can either buy something like that or you can build it. There are plans out there. And then there's another configuration screen to take care of the COM ports and so forth. But this particular one you can skip if you're going to use just sideband. Now, you need to set up the publishing page on the host software. The publishing page shows other users when they log on what's going on. So it's the name of your remote, and in this case I've got WA0TDA IC7300, and my city is Woodbury, State, Minnesota, country, United States. My grid square EN34 Mike Whiskey, and then there's a welcome message down toward the bottom. And at the time I did this, the station was off the air for maintenance. So it had that message that people would see there. And then it says, please use a different station. There's no antenna, only a dummy load. So that's pretty good information for people to have, don't you think? They'll be wondering what's going on when they don't hear anything and they're connected to a dummy load. And then there's another pop-up message on user connection. It gives a place to report problems, my call sign at arl.net, and a welcome message, and any other things that you might want them to know about. So that's where you put that information. Now it's time to test to see if everything's working. So you use the client software on another PC or on your Android phone to see if your station appears in the station list. And good, there's mine, it does appear, so ready to go. So now I connect and try the controls. I push the power button, wait maybe a second, maybe a couple seconds if it's really slow. The radio will come to life, you'll see the screen, and you can make a transmission and watch the levels on the actual radio. Now, you're experienced hams, I don't need to tell you that you don't transmit on a frequency that you haven't listened on first. So you're going to listen around, adjust the volume, and the volume can be adjusted in a couple of ways up near the top there and the microphone level at the top of this little screen here. But once you get those set where you want them, then you just use your regular computer volume controls and you're good to go. So now your station's ready to use. If somebody else wants to use your station, you use the user manager to add them. You can ban users at that same spot. Let's hope you don't have to do any of that, but sometimes you get people who, let's say they're shortwave listeners, they're not licensed, they really don't know how to do anything. Or some hams too are pretty clueless. You know, they're newbies or they just don't know what they're doing. And they push every button and turn every knob and everything. So if you have people like that who are persistently causing problems, you can use the user manager to ban them from connecting to the station. And you can set the permission level for users. So this is where you limit users to members of your club or to allow or deny transmit privileges by username, or you can add others as station administrators. Now, you certainly shouldn't add any other administrators unless they're trusted and knowledgeable, and that's preferably others in your radio club if you're setting up a club station. Really, you need to be the only one who administers your own personal remote station. And remember, too, that running a remote station that's open to other users will require some oversight and an occasional request for tech support. Where can you learn more to get help? Well, you go to the remotehams.com forum and you can find the clients, a place to talk about the clients, the client for Android and the client for Windows are different. So different documentation, different things to look at there. And all of the other documentation or the help manuals are there, general support, and a whole bunch of specific problems listed by problem type. And you can learn more on YouTube too. I love YouTube for learning things. This is the place I learned to fix the transmission in my lawnmower, and I learned to change out part of the air conditioning system in my car. So go to YouTube and type in remotehams.com or remote free software or remote HF, and you'll find out more. I know you've got some questions, and since I'm not in front of the audience right now, I'm going to just go over a few of these. So, can more than one person use the radio at once? The answer is yes. There can be multiple users, and there's no set limit either. You can all be connected to the radio at once, but only one of you can be control operator at a time. And this duty can be passed around by mutual agreement. Identify accordingly. Can multiple users use the radio software to talk to each other without sending the conversation out onto the air? Yes. The test button, when toggled on, allows a talk around between users without keying the radio. Now you still have to key transmit, but you're not actually keying the radio if the test button is also activated. So this makes it a talk around that's kind of like Skype or Echolink or something like that. And this is useful if you want to say something to somebody else who's using the radio and you don't want it to go out on the air. Like, for example, you're helping somebody to learn how to use the software. Or you just have something personal that you don't want to go out on the air. So, can multiple users hear each other as each transmits? Yes, that's true. All connected users hear all transmissions and whatever is coming in on the receiver. Can I grant transmit privileges to hams outside the USA? Well, yes, some DX stations also hold US licenses, while others may be able to operate via international agreements. Read the forum discussions on this before proceeding, and this varies depending on which country you live in. Here in the United States, the way I read the new General Class License Manual for 2023, U.S. license is required to use these remotes that are located in the U.S. or its territories. Now, this is not necessarily the case in other countries. They may allow hams from the U.S. to use a station in their country without having their particular license. So people have brought up agreements like SEPT and things like that. But for right now, I just have to advise you that you do have to have a USA license. So you will get the requests from DX stations to use the station, but you can respectfully tell them, well, sure, go ahead and tune around, but you can't have transmit privileges unless you have a US license as well. And by the way, there are VE sessions given for the US license in other countries too. So it is possible you do run into people with multiple licenses from different countries. So, can I grant transmit privileges to novice or technician license holders? Yes, you can, but I recommend not doing that. HF remote operation requires a little bit more experience, and it seems to me that the knowledge tested for in the higher license classes makes users more ready to operate these kinds of systems. But you can decide for yourself. If you know the person, they're very knowledgeable, they have a tech license, they want to use 10 meters, go for it. Can you run accessories like amplifiers and antenna rotors? Yes, you can, but you need additional hardware. Okay, so here's the question. What about running an FT8 remote efficiently? You can do so, but you need to use a different strategy, as the remote hams software will not work well because of the delay time in the system. So when you think about it, when you're using remote hams, you have the client software running on your laptop at home, and your station that you're using might be, as I said, hundreds of miles away. You're accessing it via the internet. That's the station that you want to be sending and receiving the FT8 signals on. So there's going to be delay time between where that station is and where you're located as the user using the client software of remote hams. So even though you can do that, and my station can be used that way, it isn't the most efficient thing because you're going to miss a lot of transmissions, and it takes longer to get things done on FT8 that way. So what you really want is, certainly just a few milliseconds delay time rather than a half second. So in order to do that, you need to use this different strategy. Now this is the station that I use for FT8, an IC7200 with an LDG antenna tuner that's located out at a butternut vertical antenna that's ground mounted. And I need my own dedicated private remote station with its own PC running the WSGT-X software with my call sign on it. So that's another thing, you know. You're going to have your own call sign associated with the FT8 software, the WSJT software. So it's a little bit different, you know, and you're going to want to have your own personal station and run it a different way. And you are not going to be using the remotehams.com software for this one. What you're going to use is software that gives you complete control of everything on the remote PC. Now you can also see from that very statement there that this is not a station you want to give everybody and his brother access to, because who knows what they could do if they had access to everything on your PC just to run FT8. I mean, they could look at documents you've got on there. They could browse the web using your web browser. They could change settings. It's a nightmare. So if you're going to do an efficient FT8 station, it's going to be a private station, and you're going to use remote desktop type of software like Splashtop, TeamViewer, Windows Remote Desktop, Chrome Remote Desktop, or some other remoting software. Anyway, you get that installed, and then you can log into your remote desktop, and you start by syncing your PC time to internet time. I use the Network Time app, and you can see on the right here that I've got the PC synced to plus 3 milliseconds and only a 34 millisecond lag time. So that's going to be great for FT8. And now I'm really going to be going full speed ahead with making a lot more efficient FT8 contacts. Everything's happening on the remote PC. There's no additional delay to mess up FT8 timing. So the remote hams software has a way to click the power button and turn on the radio. We saw that, but we're not using remote ham software now, and the radio has to be turned on so that the PC can handshake with it in this private FT8 setup that I've got. So there's only a couple of things I can do. I can leave the radio on all the time, just receiving with the volume turned down. And I can turn it on when I know I'm going to be using it remotely later that day if I have a way to do it. And the way I do it is with a smart switch. You can buy these things cheap on Amazon, and I use, in fact, a smart switch and Amazon Alexa. So all I have to do is tell the smart switch to turn on the ICOM radio, and it'll go ahead and do that. And then I can start my FT8 software on my host PC, and I can leave that running all the time too, and just have all the volume turned down and everything, maybe the screen even turned off. But I usually use Wake on LAN to turn mine on if I want to run FT8 remotely. And I favor these little tiny mini computers. They're just very efficient. They don't have a spinning hard drive in them. They just have a solid state drive. They're very quiet, and they don't take very much energy. So that's what I use to run my own HF remote station on remote hams, a little mini computer like that, just a tiny little thing. And it's running Windows 10. On my FT8 station, I also run a Windows 10 mini PC, and that works great. So when you start up your ham radio apps for your FT8 station using Splashtop or Chrome Remote Desktop, your screen is going to look something like this. I use Ham Radio Deluxe also. You don't have to use that, but if you have Ham Radio Deluxe, you can use it in junction with WSJT-X, and I do my logging right with the WSJT logger, and then I further use QRZ log, which works anywhere. So that's my solution, and that's the screen that I see when I'm logged into my IC7200 remote station. That's private. So it's only practical with you as a single user. Anyway, sharing your desktop with others is always a security risk. I don't recommend doing that. And remember, the WSJT requires you to log in with your own call sign, and if you were to have others using it, it's just plain impractical. So, although there's some delay between the device you use to access your remote PC and the remote PC itself, as you might expect, this does not affect FT8 contacts since everything's taking place at the station. If you're on a remote ham station, as an admin, you can allow others to operate FT8 even though the timing is an issue. They may still be successful, but you may run into issues with users failing to turn down the RF power level to operate as well as overdriving the radio. So it's just a note that you might have additional administrative duties if you do that. Now there are some other ways to go HF remote as well. One is the MFJ Rig Pi system. It's a versatile platform, especially if you want to run a private station without using Windows. It's going to use a version of Linux on a Raspberry Pi, and it provides web browser access from almost any device. And you can access this kind of a system from an iPhone or an Android phone. All you need is a web browser. Now, I haven't used the Rig Pi, but there is a user group and you can find it. Just Google it, RigPi at groups.io. So, good luck to you with your questions and answers there. I hope you took some notes, but if you don't, remember WA0TDA at arrl.net. I'll do my best to answer your questions, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. This is WA0TDA, Whiskey Alpha Zero, Tango Delta Alpha, at arrl.net.